Let's talk about defense and how it's fucking weird. Out of all the concepts in fighting games, defense is seemingly the hardest one for people to grasp. Newer players will be able to figure out how to hit buttons. Some of them will be able to understand the neutral game a little bit, but basically every player comes into fighting games and tries to defend and immediately gets their shit rocked. Hell, even at mid or higher mid levels, a lot of people have pretty poor defense. Getting someone to sit there and just deal with the opponent's attacks, or worse, try to counter them, is seemingly an extremely hard thing to actually get them to do. But why is that? Well, it's because it's fucking weird. The way that a fighting game goes around having its defense be performed is extremely impactful to how you play the game at a fundamental level. Subtle changes to how tools work can massively impact the defensive game. And when the defensive game is impacted, the entire meta of the game shifts. Let's take a mechanic like Grey Life, for an example. Whenever you take damage, there's a second bit of your health bar that's grey. This isn't your actual life, this is your grey life. Generally, there is a way to restore your grey life in some way. Let's take 3 notable examples. The first one is by doing nothing. The more that you don't take damage, the more health that you get back, meaning that playing defensive and not getting hit is going to reward you in the long run. Perhaps the opposite is true. Maybe hitting the opponent actually causes your grey life to come back. This means that when you take damage, you're going to need to go back on the offensive. Alternatively, maybe it's a third completely different thing. Perhaps grey life is something that you want because it intertwines itself with the mechanics of the game. Let's say that you could use your grey life to instantly cancel whatever action you're doing and return yourself back to neutral. That would be a fun and cool mechanic, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? All 3 of these systems use grey life, but the way that the health is restored to you drastically alters the way that the game would be played. And depending on how strong these things are, they would also drastically alter the way that the game is played. Let's look at one of my favorite examples. X-Men Mutant Academy 2. Recently, I went to an offline event that had a mystery game tournament. The first round was X-Men Mutant Academy 2, and Samurai Showdown 2. I didn't get to play X-Men Mutant Academy. But players quickly found out that if you have a bit of grey life, it will regenerate relatively quickly. Meaning the meta became get a bit of damage on your opponent and then run away to make sure that your grey life would fill back up faster than theirs did. The game became extremely defensive, and while with more time they would have been able to figure out better strategies to keep the opponent in block stuns or in mix-up situations, the fact that the defensive option itself was so powerful immediately led to the entire meta of the game evolving right then and there. Tekken 8 is a game with seemingly the opposite problem. In that game, you get grey life by hitting the opponent, meaning that people are going to play more aggressive when they're on the back foot. Something as simple as this drastically affects how better players see the game. Now imagine that this is one mechanic of like 8, and this is the level that we're dealing with. I come from anime games. They are my home, they are where I live, they are where I love. Anime games are known for having a lot of crazy bullshit. If you ever talk to an anime player about the things that they like in their game, they're probably going to bring up offensive bullshit. Not like starting swearing at you offensive bullshit, more like, I played the little bug man and he has an unblockable after I hit you with this funny cloud offensive bullshit. But despite how crazy these games can get, it is very common for them to also have a lot of defensive options at the player's disposal. Let's look at Strive, because it's the game that I play. Strive has a bunch of defensive mechanics. FD is a slight push block that forces the opponent to get a little bit further away from you. Deflect Shield is a massive push block that forces the opponent to get way further away from you. Instant blocking keeps the opponent directly in your face. Instant blocking faultless defense causes a massive push block with a very strict timing. Burst gets you out of any block string or any combo that you are in, and if used in neutral, gives you an offensive reward. Yellow Roman Cancel is a spin on the Roman Cancel system that causes the opponent to get off of you during a block string. And on top of that, you have your standard reversals and supers that can get characters out of a pinch for a little bit of meter. That's like 7 defensive mechanics, all of which are tied to different things, being forms of skill expression or meter management. Sometimes both. And even then, defense in Guilty Gear Strive is not entirely defined by these systems. One of the most prevalent forms of defensive options in Guilty Gear is mashing. I promise this is going somewhere. Every character in Guilty Gear Strive has access to a mid-crushing move. Some characters have access to multiple mid-crushing moves. Some characters have access to low-crushing moves. What these moves do is completely avoid attacks that hit that range of the character. 6P is designed to be an anti-air attack. However, because of the way that it's designed, it causes mid-hitting attacks to just completely whiff on players who use it. This can be used in several situations to just get characters out of defensive strings that they don't want to be in. Slayer notoriously has a very high-hitting 6P hitbox, meaning that if he's fighting a character like Elfelt, a character who has moves that generally go over people's 6P hitboxes, it doesn't work. Because characters have options to completely avoid attacks without putting themselves in extremely detrimental situations, block strings can become interactable by simply pressing 6P at the right time. Some characters are defined by their mid-crush moves. Chaco's 2K is an absolute menace for people who are just getting into the game because it goes under basically fucking everything, if I'm entirely honest. And because this defense has this weird interactivity with it, with so many options at people's disposal, having someone on the back foot is never as simple as I'm just gonna keep throwing mids out and eventually they're going to get hit. The amount of options that you have on defense can be overwhelming at times, and thus people generally pick the easiest option, hitting buttons. But it's that level of overwhelming defensive options that really make anime games shine. This level of interactivity isn't exclusive to Gear. It isn't even exclusive to anime games. Anime games just heighten that level of interactivity. If you talk to a Street Fighter player who's relatively good at the game, you might hear them talk about their interesting defensive mechanics and the things that they like about it. If you talk to someone who's enjoying 2XKO right now, you might hear them talk about how they feel like they always have options during a block stun or on defense, something which arguably isn't very common in tag games. But if you talk to someone who doesn't like either of these games, they'll either say that the defensive options aren't that interesting or simply aren't there, or they just kind of don't vibe with it. They don't fuck with the vision, you know? They don't see what you see. That's because inherently defense is a vibe more than anything. There is a literal game feel to blocking an opponent for an extended period of time. Blocking in a fighting game will feel completely different depending on the game that you are playing. Hell, even in some games, blocking against different characters will have completely different feelings. In Strive, you can block against Geo just doing a full block string and not have to worry at fucking all. There's like no mix-ups in this shit. You start doing that against Slayer and suddenly you're gonna be shitting bricks. A lot of the time when you see people talk about defense, and I've done this in the past, they've made it sound as simple as simply hold down back and wait for the opponent to let you hit them. But that's not entirely true. Defense is an active action. You just need to figure out the rhythm of the action in your game in order to understand it better. Dancing to someone else's rhythm can be extremely hard, especially if they're not doing like a 4-4 match, so they're doing fucking 8-12 or whatever the funky-ass time signature is. This motherfucker's out here doing a 3-6-2 over an 86. Ooh, that sounds terrible. Because of that, when learning a game, you need to figure out what the rules of defense are in that game. Gear has a lot of options for you to hit buttons while you're blocking. It also has a lot of ways for you to create your own openings by expressing your skill a little bit more. Other games don't do this and require you to be patient. Wait for the right time to use a very strong defensive option to immediately turn the tides of battle. But figuring out what you can do in these games and getting the vibe of them will really help your defense. Everything's a little bit weird when you first see it. Everything's a little bit weird when you interact with it. But once you figure out the rhythm, once you figure out your options, and once you figure out how to dance to your opponent's tune, you'll find out that actually, defense is pretty fucking cool. Anyway, I'm streaming right now. Come watch. We're doing Game Awards voting. Also, I'm like sponsored by Varmillo, they make arcade controllers and keyboards. Go and buy one. Use link description now. Thanks for watching. See you hopefully at the end of this week for a less rambly video. Bye-bye. 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 Bye-bye.